I would like to call this meeting of the Berlin-Boylston School District to order. This meeting is being recorded and your image and or voice may be broadcast. We are going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to item number 3, we have public comments. Christy, do you have a list?
I only have one person on the list, and be Mrs. Degley Alberti.
Okay.
Okay, give her 1 second. I promoted her to panelist.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm sorry, it takes a second to reset. All right. Good evening, school committee of Boylston Berlin Regional School District and superintendent. And Mrs. Costello too. I apologize, I forget your exact title. So I'm speaking to 2 different items on the agenda this evening. One being the hiring update and then also the sexual harassment policy. So it saddened me greatly to hear of Ace Thompson leaving from BES. Also the school nurses from BES and BMS making 5 resignations for school nurses within 1 calendar school year. It was also very sad to hear that Mrs. Koziak, one of the teacher union reps and a beloved 4th grade teacher, also resigned. I've only spoken directly to one of these individuals, and I think it speaks volumes they did not want any specifics to be used for fear of retaliation to friends and family. Many school committee meetings I have been witness to over the last 2.5 years, and I've been shocked by the intolerance for opinions other than their own. Policies are passed with little thought to how it will affect staff retention. Students and parents alike are affected by these staff members leaving. It affects their education and emotional well-being. This needs to be taken into consideration when future policies are discussed and passed. I also challenge the school committee to make policies available to the public via hyperlinks within the agenda to allow the public to review what is being voted upon. The policies like the sexual harassment policy is extremely important, and its historical context is important for those voting upon them. In 1996, 7 teenage boys in Tohoto were sexually harassed by a pedophile janitor and superintendent at that time, again, 1996, not now. Redundancies were made within the sexual harassment policy to allow safe routes of reporting. The superintendent's office was removed out of Tohoto because of these incidents back in 1996. And among other policies, the bullying policy was brought to my attention, has not been addressed since 2018, and apparently needs to be reviewed biannually by the school committee. And so while time is being spent on amendments that aren't necessary and harmful to others, I would also like to bring the bullying policy to their attention so it can be reviewed biannually as the state requires. Thank you so much for my time on the public comment.
Thank you, Jessica. And we have no one else for public comments.
No one then indicated so in advance of the meeting.
Okay. And no one has raised their hand to speak.
I don't see any at this time.
Okay. Has anyone received any communications they would like to share? No? Okay. We are going to move on to item number 5. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Adam, a second?
Second.
Julie, thank you. Discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
You know what? Actually, hold on a second. Christy, because it's Zoom, do I have to do a roll call for every vote?
Yes, you have to do a roll call for all votes on Zoom.
That's what I thought. Okay, let's do this again. So all in favor, Julie,
Aye.
Megan, Adam,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. The consent agenda as presented passes. Before we get to the report section, I would like to introduce and invite Lisa Sequeira, who would like to show the committee an educational tool that was donated to Tohoto and is on the agenda under business items for us to vote on tonight. And Christy will be making her a panelist, so it'll just take a minute.
1 second.
Hi, good evening. I would like to, first of all, I am so grateful for the support of Crest Technology in support of this next level of STEM accessibility. As biotechnology changes rapidly in our society, and we've all heard of PCR testing, and those are pieces of equipment that I have in my classroom. And so it makes so much of what is happening around us more relevant for our students. This grant provides specifically 2 class sets of Bandit gel electrophoresis tools. And it's really, it's really hard to see, but I was gonna have you build them, but they're just these, they're pieces of equipment that the students are actually, they're building gel electrophoresis chambers, and they are using understanding of basic circuitry and understanding of basic biotechnology to actually build the equipment and then run labs that are associated with understanding DNA and macromolecules, and engaged in, building and seeing how all of that fits together. So we're really tying in the technology and engineering along with the science and the biology. This is extremely exciting for me because oftentimes students can understand the concepts, but don't often understand kind of exactly what is happening. And what makes this even more exciting, I think, is the opportunity to kind of piggyback along with the opportunities that our students at Tohoto are going to have through accessing opportunities, like internship opportunities in the biotech field, or I mean, in many other fields, but this gives students skills that they can actually use in these offsite opportunities. So I couldn't be more grateful to Crest Technologies for purchasing this equipment. It allows for an entire class, 2 class sets. So all of the introductory biology students will have access to this material. I did take a full day professional development opportunity through Harvard Life Science Outreach, which was hosted by Mini PCR, which is the company that produces Bandit. They also produce, and we have several units of Mini PCRs, which we are all familiar with the sound of that because most of us have gotten a PCR test, but they are an incredibly relevant and supportive company to try to make biotechnology accessible to all students of all ages. And I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to train some of the staff in the middle school in hopes that some of this technology can be introduced. I'm going to stop there because I get really excited and questions. I'm thrilled. And we also got some set volume micropipettes, which are really introductory ways of measuring out small bits of material for use in gel electrophoresis. So these are all really relevant skills that my students have said, I was like, when they reach back out after a college experience, they'll say, I was the only one in, my lab that knew how to use a micropipette or had run a gel before or had loaded a gel before. And this will give them even more insight to the whole process.
Hey, Lisa, a question for you.
Yeah.
First of all, your enthusiasm for this is amazing and contagious. I'll be the first to say I'm not usually a fan of Zoom meetings, but it does give me an opportunity to Google electrophoresis to understand what it is. So for that, I'm grateful. Just is this?
Oh, you can't read that. It's backwards.
So is this technology and are these kits for educational purposes in the school or for testing? Help me understand a little more because I'm new to it. Forgive me.
So in the biology curriculum, the 2016 frameworks for biology curriculum, which is tested for the biology MCAS, which all students are required to take to get a diploma. There is a whole section on heredity and DNA. And this allows students to understand the relevancy of the macromolecule DNA and understand, how it is, how we investigate it in the world of science and how technology allows us to do that. And so it's one of the basic frameworks. DNA is a biomolecule that provides diversity and also connects all living things.
Right.
So it just allows one more avenue for students to get excited about science and engaged with, something that they have to do, or the test,
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining.
Yeah, I was kind of with Bob. I didn't exactly know what it is, and after 15 years of being with my wife, who is a biologist and works in a lab, still don't really know what it is. But when I told her about it, she said, "Wow, that's pretty cool." If she had something like that when she was in school to use in a lab in high school, she would have been pretty psyched about it. So she knows what they are and apparently uses them herself. And genomics, I guess, is her field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, that's good stuff.
We've come a long way from the Punnett Square.
Oh, those, I'm telling you, the kids love them. The kids love the Punnett squares. They do.
That's great.
So,
Excellent. Anyone else? Lisa, thank you so much for coming and showing us. And I really do wish we were in person so we could see it better. And I would invite you to our next meeting if you want to come and have us take a look at it. It looks really neat. Like it's something I would really be interested in myself.
Oh, absolutely. It's very, very cool. So I'd be happy to come. Absolutely.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing us tonight. Since we're voting on it later, it's nice to know what we're voting on. So genuinely appreciate your time.
So if you want to Google the company, it's Mini PCR and the product is Bandit. I don't know if in somewhere in the material that might have been sent to you, you might have a link to that.
Excellent.
And that shows you.
That's great. Thank you so much. I love your enthusiasm too. Like it makes me want to do it.
Well, come.
Definitely.
You don't want to see what's in our DNA.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to reports. And actually the first one is mine. It's the school committee self-evaluation report. This is a report that we do every year in May. And it covers 39 different items from from operations to meetings, goal setting and monitoring, budget, policy, personnel, law and ethics, community engagement. So it's a chance for us to anonymously give our thoughts, rate us as to how we think we're doing, and then comment on really why we chose those evaluations of our committee as a whole. This year, there were 5 of us that did the evaluation. Bob had just come on, or maybe you came on after, I'm not sure. Was it, Bob, when did you come on?
I think you
Right.
were reviewing the results of it in late May when I joined.
Yes, yeah. So we had and it would have been hard for him, even if he had been at one meeting, to really, look the whole year over and decide how he felt things had gone. So, we all participated in it, and we compiled this report. And the report has a summary of findings. It talks about our weaknesses, our strengths, and then it actually has anonymized comments in there relating to each item. And it helps to look at those comments when you're looking at the rating, because it shows you why people rated it the way that they did. And I think what I would like to talk about is our areas of perceived strength and our areas for potential development. We gave ourselves high ratings and positive comments under operating protocols, understanding member authority, and following the committee's expected chain of commands. And then the format of committee meetings and using subcommittees to advance the committee's work, using effective processes for policy review, using an effective process for the superintendent's evaluation, participating appropriately in the hiring and support of personnel, and employee relations via fostering open and fair communication with bargaining units. We were also good with maintaining confidentiality, understanding roles and responsibilities, avoiding conflict of interest, and demonstrating respect during the committee's deliberations. The areas for potential development, these are pretty glaring, and I don't think any of us are surprised. Like we've all talked about this and during meetings, and even just one-on-one, saying, oh, geez, we got to really work on community relations. It would be great if we could find a way to get ourselves out there. And so the 2 biggest areas that we should look at when we're considering our goals are community engagement and budget practices. And I'd like to give an honorary mention to new member onboarding process, because that really could use more help rather than here's this information, go and do this, go and do that. So those are the areas that I expect us when we do our goals to be working on. And another comment that I'll make, and if anybody has a comment that they would like to share, feel free to do so, is that the most glaring thing in this report was that it was almost a tale of 2 school committees. It was a school committee prior to February and a school committee post-February. And that had a lot to do with some personality clashes. It had a lot to do with overwhelming COVID demands. I mean, it felt like every week we were getting new protocol that we had to vote on, and it was a lot. And we had governance meetings because a lot of us were new and a lot of us needed refreshers. So I think it was very overwhelming, and you see that in the comments. And there's areas where we thought were weaknesses before that we made strengths. So those are things that I'm proud of. But I love the fact that we've all identified the weaknesses and are passionate about making those into strengths as we move forward. Would anyone like to make a comment?
Lori, I guess one thing that just kind of sticks out to me looking through this is there's a good amount of consistency across the committee with recognizing where we are strong and not strong. You look at, for example, how we rated ourselves for community outreach. 2 of us rated it at the lowest, 3 of us rated it second lowest. It wasn't like there was an outlier that seems to think that it's something we're really good at. I think we all recognize the areas of weakness are what they are. So I think that's a good thing that we all seem to be relatively on the same page as to where we need to do better and where we might be doing well. And there's unlikely to be a lot of disagreement amongst us as to where we need to focus to make the biggest improvements this upcoming year as a committee. So that's one of my comments. The other one I'll speak to a little more in new business, but I know one of the things that obviously community outreach and engagement is one of our lower rated items. I look at some of the commentary here too around us not having good vehicles to communicate. The superintendent is effective at sending weekly or bi-weekly newsletter out to parents, but there's really no communication from the district to parents and voters and other stakeholders in our towns who have a vested interest in the success of our school district. And so I do intend during new business today to suggest and make a motion that we establish for ourselves a social media presence as a committee, so that we have a channel through which to share what we're doing, agendas, things that we recently have done, and speak as a committee and as members of the committee through that kind of channel. Obviously, I think we know that social media is where a lot of these conversations happen. I think, Elon Musk commented that Twitter is the new town square, right? So I think, I'm not saying Twitter's where we need to be, but I'm saying that those platforms are where these conversations happen, and we need to figure out how we can be a part of those conversations while still remaining within the confines of open meeting law and things of that nature.
Well, and I remember when we were doing our goals with Dorothy and we were going over this in the fall, and we had discussed having a Facebook page. We had discussed possibly writing in the superintendent's, weekly or however often it comes out now, newsletter that would come out. We had great ideas, and just a lot of things happened at once. And when we became a committee of 5, we were also going to other meetings and being a part of that and seeing what else was going on in the town, but we were stretched really, really thin. And so we had to pull back, and that made a possible, movement in a positive direction. Just kind of, not only was it stagnant, I felt like we almost moved back a little bit. But I agree with you, Adam. I think that what I really like about this committee is everybody's really enthusiastic and excited and has really good ideas. And people honor each other's ideas and talk them out. And I feel excited for this year. I looked at, when I was putting this together, I thought there's one of 2 ways when I was writing the report that I could look at this. I could go, oh, geez, look at these areas are significant needs, or how I'm choosing to look at most things in life right now is this is a possibility for positive change. This is a possibility to make something great. And it's only when you really starts to become a squeaky wheel that you give it attention. So,
and I think, Laura, I'll give you some credit where credit's due. I think there have been a couple occasions, especially this spring, where you were able to, include a message as the chair in the superintendent's newsletter on specific topics. I also know that, Mike did quite a bit of work earlier in the year on statements around, welcoming parent involvement and support into our committee meetings, and always being open to that and wanting to that and encouraging that. And also, occasionally making some Facebook posts yourself too, especially when some significant things happen just at the end of the year. And then, with the news of Ace's departure too, being something that affected a lot of people, I think we can do more and more of that to demonstrate to the community that we are paying attention, listening, and show them what we're doing.
absolutely.
Lori, I just want to say 2 things. First off, thank you for compiling that, because I'm sure that was not an easy task to have to read through all of our comments and then assemble it. But the second thing is, I'd like to piggyback off what Adam said. And I think a social media page is a great idea, because being a parent, you're so busy. And sometimes sometimes I don't even read my email, my personal email, right? Everyone's knee deep in their work email, but sometimes I don't even get a chance to read my personal email. I miss things like, oh, there's a school committee meeting, this week. And I think it's important for parents to know what we're talking about, and when we have meetings, so that people can come and be informed, and we're not just listening to the gossip mill in the town. We're hearing what's actually happening in our schools, so that as parents, we can make educated decisions as to what's best for our family. So I think that's a great idea to start a platform, not for gossip and arguing, but for facts, for here's the agenda. Hey, we have a meeting this week, and that way, hopefully this will spark more parents to send emails with concerns and, get involved. So I think that's a great idea.
That's an excellent point too. And I would like to thank Jessica Degliaberti, who posted an email that I had shared with her with all of our emails on that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to, you can reach out to any of us and, we'll get back to you. But if there's something that's going on and you have a question, coming to us or going to the right source, if it's something that's going on at Tohoto, you go to the people at Tohoto. If you don't get the answer, then you go to central office and then you go to us. But even if you skip that, if you go to us, we'll try to help you get to where you need to go to get the answer. One of the reasons we lived in Berlin, we loved Berlin, we moved to Boylston, and I love both towns. And it's such a small community, and I feel like we're giving an opportunity, if we do this Facebook page, to unite everybody. Because if you in a vacuum, you create your own information, because you start to wonder why there isn't information. So I'm hopeful.
Lori, question.
Lori, who's that?
Sorry,
Bob.
just a question on the self-eval report. Yeah, thank you for putting that together. I did have a chance to skim through it. It references a goal setting workshop in the fall.
Mhm.
Can you say more about that? What that looks like? Is that in a public forum? And just help me understand what that looks like.
So last year, I believe we did it. I believe we did it with Dorothy, someone who's Dorothy Presser, who is from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And she came and she helped us to organize all of our thoughts, talk about, and then we kind of talked it out. I do not believe that was a public meeting, although I don't know.
That was.
It was.
It
Okay,
was.
so yeah, so it probably is. You can go. It's funny because it wasn't a normal type meeting. But so you can probably go and watch that as well. But it just helps us to get our ideas kind of cohesive, put things down, organize, decide what our process is going to be.
Okay, was that a one-time thing, or would you envision us doing that again this year
Oh no, we'll do it again this year,
with that?
I would think. I don't know if we'll do it in that format, but we'll absolutely do it again, because every year we want to have different goals, because every year we're going to have strengths and weaknesses.
Sure, right. Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, is just trying to understand where and when does the conversation happen about, what do we do with this great collated feedback about what the school committee is doing well and where we have opportunities to develop. I think certainly the committee would benefit from us talking about these things openly, candidly, and perhaps the public might appreciate seeing the sausage making there.
Absolutely. No, we'll be doing that in the fall, with school just starting up right now. We're going to get through, all the beginning of school. And then once that settles, I see that probably my guess would be October sometime, because we want to get them early enough. If we can get them done in September, depending on the agenda, next time I meet with Jeff, we'll talk about what our upcoming agendas look like. The sooner we can get them, but we might be able to start working on other pieces of them before them as well.
Yeah, right. Great, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I liked your summary there, the tale of two committees, because it really was. I mean, a lot of these, especially the community outreach one, I mean, it may not have had enough time since February, March to really be noticeable, but internally I've noticed it. So I'm optimistic about the future of that this year with this committee. Beforehand, I know we had it as a goal, but it was just never prioritized. Always pushed off and certain things said. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I know it's a terrible area for us right now, but I think it's from what's happened already, and I know what's coming is probably going to be even better. So I like how you summarized the tale of two committees, because it really was two completely different committees this past year.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it. Now we will go to Ms. Costello, the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
Good
You're on,
evening. I wanted to switch around what shows on the agenda, and I want to talk a little bit about the Ames Web data that was presented, and then I'll talk about our crisis meeting and some of the outcomes of that meeting. Superintendent Zangi had brought to my attention, there was some question around scores that were presented through Ames Web by the principals in winter. It was March of this past year, and a question around the 5th grade and 20% of those students being able to read. I'm not quite sure how that was stated, but I did want to take a moment to address that. And I know in speaking with John Campbell, we're going to talk more about that in October. We're just starting to get the results of the MCAS, the raw data coming in. So we have to break that apart, and we're going to be presenting that in October, along with the Ames Web, and I think how those two assessments tie into one another. So let me clarify for a moment that the Lexile measurements, the ones that show the 5th grade at 20%, those measure one component of Ames Web data that we collect, and that Lexile scores measure oral reading fluency with students. That's how many words students can read aloud in a period of time. So it doesn't, Lexile scores don't measure comprehension necessarily, although comprehension can impact the Lexile scores, because if you understand what you're reading, you're going to read it faster, right? So, but it doesn't necessarily impact MCAS scores necessarily. It seems to have an impact over time, though. As students get older, they're trying to comprehend more information. They're reading, we use the phrase in education, they're learning to read, and then they start to read to learn. So as they're moving into that and more complex text, the more fluent they are, the faster they can absorb text and read fluently, the more information they're going to begin to comprehend. They're going to start to put the words together and make sense of it more. So the 5th grade scores, as we looked at them in that one component, are concerning to us. We see that there was a decline over time in the scores from the grade levels from K through 4 and then down to 5th grade. We're particularly 4th and 5th grade, but I think that it was most pronounced in 5th grade. And so that is a concern. So I don't discount that at all. In fact, you know, that's a lot of what we've been trying to talk about through the budget season, and why we added the literacy coach to that work. That teacher is an expert in this field, and it's very, very specific, a lot of this work. We want her to work in instructional strategies with the teachers who are really transitioning over into a new way of teaching reading that we hadn't used before. If you've been around long enough and had children in the district and really across the nation, there was a lot of emphasis on the balanced literacy approach. Reading, just right reading, putting students on a certain level of reading, right? K, you know, what level is my child reading, just right books, and so on. Well, now research is showing more that we have to be very specific about instruction around reading and how we approach phonics and phonemic awareness at an early level. So we've been working with teachers to teach that in the classroom. And I know we talked about this earlier in the spring, I think because some of the parents of children in the younger grades are starting to see a difference in how reading is taught to them and how they break apart words and how they learn to decode them. And that's through programs like Fundations and Heggerty, which we've introduced now kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, and now this year we're moving into 3rd grade. So you'll see the scores are stronger. Lexile levels are stronger. Overall scores in Ames Web are stronger in those grades where they've been having that experience. They didn't have that same kind of experience in what are now our 4th and 5th grade students. So what we're trying to look at now is how to support those students who have been struggling in 6th grade when they're moving into middle school. And we really see a discrepancy in some of those students in their comprehension abilities. Part of that also is because as students are struggling with words, they're also not getting the vocabulary that they need to have, building their vocabulary. And that's another component of Ames Web that we look at, particularly in the upper grades. So all of these pieces we're trying to address. We moved into that science of reading approach, as I spoke of. We're doing the phonics and phonemic awareness. We're really seeing a difference in the early grades, moving now into 3rd grade. We piloted last year a very rigorous program, a literacy program for 3rd through 5th grade that gives us more vocabulary and an ability to really assess in the moment so that we can see students' gaps right away in those grades. We had an older program there that we had been using. We do the review of curriculum every 5 years. That's our cycle. So we were coming out of that cycle for that grade, those grades. And that's why we came to pilot this particular program after looking at a number of them. So we feel that this program affords us the rigor that we need to have to take those students from third grade through fifth grade and into the middle school. I think that having the literacy coach is going to be a great benefit for us. And I know we have the Acceleration Academy going on next week for kindergarten through second grade. Really targeting those students that we saw gaps in specific areas in Ames Web scores as a whole. John Campbell and I have been doing training, and I give him credit as a principal because he's absorbed this in such depth around literacy and understanding literacy. He truly has been supporting his teachers. He's going to be working with a literacy coach over in Boylston this year as well to talk with teachers, to support teachers as they get on board with more of this work and improve our Ames Web scores. And I think that over the years, we're expanding the ability to progress monitor our students in ELA and math too. We're just getting more detailed, more specific in how we're looking at where students are at throughout the year. And Ames Web is one measure of that. That's why we benchmark 3 times a year. So we did go into our spring data. Christy, you could show just in the Lexile scores. I mean, she has a document I was going to share with you to give you that hard copy. Christy, can you just pull up that for a moment, just so folks who may not be aware understand what I'm talking about?
Sarah, while she's pulling that up, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
And I'm looking at that data she's about to pull up. I'm also side by side looking at the ELA MCAS results in 5th and 6th grade and 4th grade. So I look at BES, for example, 5th grade ELA MCAS. I see that 69% of our 5th graders are meeting or exceeding in that. On the other side of that, though, for Ames Web data, the same class, I'm seeing that, between 5 and 20% are above the 50th percentile. I guess I'm looking and could use some help from you helping us decide or determine how should we interpret those different data points across 2 different testing, vehicles.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So when you're looking at the 20%, that's just the Lexile levels alone, right? So that's the reading fluency piece. That's one component. When we have MCAS data, it's a different type of assessment. First of all, it's not timed. So we're not timing student fluency. It's not around that. It's more around comprehension of information. And MCAS is also really about the curriculum that's being taught at that particular grade level. It's around the standards that are being met and standards that are coming up through the grade levels, so standards that are building upon themselves through the years. So 2 different kinds of assessments. Ames Web gives us information that will help guide us to what we need to improve on for MCAS tests, but they're not exactly comparable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand in practice, how do you use these results for a class or grade level and for even an individual student to guide instruction?
Yeah, okay. So we like to use Ames Web more for individual students.
Okay.
We look at the team, the grade level teams, certainly the literacy coach, the principals will look at the Ames Web scores to identify specific gaps and skills that students have, and we'll do progress monitoring. So the team gets together and looks at the students in that particular class or that grade level and sees areas where they need to, they call them progress monitor, get in there and do some interventions to support those children. It mirrors what's going on next week when we have specific targeted areas that those teachers in K through 2 are looking at with those students who are invited into the program, that they're going to work, they're nice small groups. So they're going to, and we have our speech language therapists there. We have paraprofessionals, the teachers, our veteran teachers. We have our math coach there. They're really going to be targeting specific areas to improve on. I think that the MCAS, Adam, is really a bigger picture look at where we are as a district and in individual grade levels as far as classes of students, cohorts of students. That's why if you've watched school committees in the past, we tend to look at them as a big picture, like a whole cohort of students. And it's very hard, like we'll look at the scores year to year, like this year's third grade versus last year's third grade. And we tend to say, oh, but this year's third grade went down. They're totally different groups of
Okay.
students,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're better off looking at individual growth of students than we really are whole groups. But I think MCAS, the Department of Ed, tend to present it more in that way, that we're looking at the larger cohorts or the grade levels.
Okay.
But we really have to always keep looking and keep our eye on the individual children. And again, it goes back to, that's why we try to get the literacy coaches involved, and we have literacy tutors coming in. We want their eyes on all of our children, each of our children, I should say, rather than, I mean, it's great to say, oh yeah, we hit the 80th percentile or 90th percentile for grade 4, this year in MCAS, and we celebrate. But what does that really mean? Because what about the other 20% of those children, right? That we're concerned about.
Like I look at the Aimsweb numbers that Christy has up now, and I see, okay, so 57% of our students in grade 1 are above the 50th percentile. Well,
Right.
that tells me that where our bell curve is skewed in the correct direction, right? Whereas in 5th grade, we're skewed the wrong direction there. But
Right.
it isn't necessarily as much of a full grade level tool as MCAS is
Right.
when evaluating us compared to other, let's say, districts. But clearly, as you pointed out, there's a concern to be had in grade 4 and grade 5 in comparison to the others.
Absolutely. There's no denying that. We can see the difference between those grade levels. As like I said, these are the early grades are the ones who benefited from the shift and the way we instruct in reading. And I think we're going to start to see improvement in 4th and 5th grade, because we'll be having those students
Move up.
in the coming years, right, moving up to 4th and 5th grade and being supported by new curriculum, a new program that I think offers and holds us accountable for those particular areas that'll strengthen the reading ability, the comprehension for with our students. And I think that's going to make, and certainly the vocabulary, which is something that we've been hearing from the middle school, is a significant issue as they move into middle school. So all of that needs work. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It was something that came up and I wanted to clarify it for you, but you're not off base in a concern. It's a warning to us, or it's a flag for us that we definitely know we need to address. So I try to share with you some, things that we are doing to improve these scores, and we're mindful of that as well. So.
Can I ask you one question, Carol?
Sure.
So the current then 6th grade ELA teachers have access to this and have seen this and know these kids, then there's a significant struggle for these students to help them?
Yes, and I think in the past, Julie, there was more, what's the word I'm looking for? Speculation about why this might be, why these issues are occurring. But what's happened now over the years is we have Aimsweb being used from K to 8. 7th and 8th grade just joined on last year to do this. So the teachers are consistent with being able to look at the data from year to year. So when a student goes from 5th to 6th, they're able to obtain the same data. They're using the same language and they're looking at the same measures, where they didn't in the past. There was a disconnect between how the students left 5th grade and what they were looking at in 6th grade. So I think the middle school teachers, is particularly 6th grade, we're trying to figure out what's going on. One thing they notice, and I would say this is probably about to measure everything now by COVID, probably about 3 years ago now, they would say, we really see like the kids' phonics, like they're really struggling to be able to read the words. They're really struggling to be able to comprehend, but there's something going on with the phonics. Well, that was really before we started putting some of these programs in place, like foundations, like Haggerty. And I think that over time, they're going to start to see the difference as they get those students coming up to the grade levels. I also do think having a literacy coach on hand now will provide us with an opportunity to do some training in the middle school with how understanding reading and science of reading. I know the elementary teachers have been doing a lot of coursework, workshops on their own, and certainly some of them have taken the course that John and I took that have helped them really, and are reading or doing book studies. We have a whole report on it that we've been reviewing before we give to the school committee and to the parent community, so you can understand the science of reading more clearly. I mean, it's a very comprehensive report, really to help everyone in the community understand this work and how to support your children at home. So I know that that's something that John and I feel very strongly about communicating. We're talking about communication earlier, and I think that that's something that he definitely and I want to do as well, so we can help these students. It's a real, but I would say to everyone, this is what I'm happy about is I think we're ahead of the pack, because I think that we're among those that have made the shift already. I think districts, if you start to talk to folks in other districts, school districts are starting to make that shift into the science of reading, but we've been able to purchase foundations for the past several years, and Haggerty for the past several years. And I think that that's helped us. We've seen this ahead of time. We've seen this so that we're already working on an area I think that other districts are just starting to recognize. Maybe that's the best way to say it. So so I'm happy. And I do also want to say, I keep mentioning Foundation and Haggerty. They're programs, they're research-based programs, but it also speaks to the delivery of those programs, because the program in and of itself is not going to be effective unless teachers deliver that instruction effectively. And that's the work of that literacy coach.
Carol, something you said there just kind of caught my attention. We're ahead of the game. We're ahead of other districts, but I think you also said earlier that we're looking to roll this out to additional grade levels. From our standpoint as a school committee and our ability to approve budgets and move to get more money to fund the schools from the member towns in our district, are there things we could be doing to accelerate the expansion of this program that seems to be highly effective, helping our students read from a budget standpoint, or from an advocacy standpoint for us as a school committee?
Yeah, I think we're going to address that in the fall when it's budget season. I do want to revisit funding around reading tutors, reading specialists in the building, getting more remedial services for those students. And I think that just the education and the PD for our teachers, we use a lot of our grant funding from the federal government for PD for teachers, but we don't get a large amount of money to do that. So I think being able through grants and through the support from the budget to be able to educate our teachers more in these instructional practices, not only in elementary school, but really through middle school, is going to benefit us as well. So
I think something good for Julie and I to keep on mind on the
Yeah,
budget subcommittee
yeah.
too. And I think you've got a lot of school committee members here who are itching for the opportunity to go out and get more funding for our schools, especially in Boylston, where we know they are currently underfunded compared to our statewide per pupil expenditures.
Yeah, thank you. And we definitely appreciate that. It's essential for us to be able to do that kind of work with our students. We are grateful for the support that we would get in those areas. So
Thanks, Carol.
thank you.
Hey, Carol, can I ask a question about the
Sure.
chart?
Sure.
So I really appreciate that there's a lot behind, a lot layers deeper than these aggregates, and you have to have care in drawing conclusions from histograms like this. But just for my own reference, because I'm kind of new to having this visibility. Pandemic aside, if you were to draw a horizontal line on this chart and say, I'd feel good if our schools were hitting at least this number, where would you put that line?
I would put the line at 70% for these specific tests. And again, this is just one component. These are the Lexile levels. So I'm talking, if we're looking at the comprehensive assessment itself, I would say 70% or greater. So I would want to be able to bring it up to that level.
Okay. Thank you. That's really helpful for me.
And I would say that, you know, John and I have talked about having a goal. I think he spoke to that in the spring about moving our goal in next, and we'll talk about this more in the fall in our 3-year plan. We talked about 90% of our third graders scoring, how do we say, 90% of our third graders scoring 90 or above in our MCAS scores, you know, by the end of 3 years. So we're ambitious about this,
Yeah.
but we think that it's achievable. We just have to, get the right, how do I say, the right people in place, the right training in place, maybe. I think we have the right people in place as far as our teachers, but we have to work together to get them the support that they need to do this work.
I think you probably.
Carol, I have a question. Sorry, Bob, were you done?
I'm done. Go ahead.
So you talked a lot about this Ames Web tool, and I've been thinking about this multiple meetings. I've never asked because it's a little off topic, but I think it's somewhat relevant. Are you able to use this tool to identify students that might be performing above average and perhaps give them, you know, make sure that they're being challenged so they don't get bored and by 4th or 5th grade kind of be like, I don't want to try. Because I feel like that could, you know, I know when you're in 1st and 2nd grade, sometimes it's, you know, you love learning, and then the older you get, sometimes going to school gets a little bit more difficult. And if kids are bored, they might have the intelligence, or they might actually naturally have the capability, and they might get bored. So I'm just wondering if our district uses this tool to perhaps identify some of the kids that might be overperforming, and maybe give them a little bit more to keep challenging them and keep pushing them.
Yeah, in the same way we identify those students who have significant gaps or some gaps, we can also identify those students who have higher scores, who are stronger readers at the grade level, and may need to do that as well. You're absolutely right. I mean, we have to think about how we're challenging those students. And I think that really is in a large part the classroom teacher and the grade level and what they're doing as far as a grouping of students and how they're doing their instruction to those particular groups of students or those individual students. So you're right. There's a number of variables. I think you brought up, you know, how 4th and 5th graders approach Ames Web tests after they've had them so many years. I'd like to think not. I mean, perhaps that's something that some students may not take the test with the same mindset as others. That's a possibility. I wouldn't discount that, but I also wouldn't say that is what's happening in 4th and 5th grade. Some of it could be the administration of the Ames Web at that level. Perhaps we need to look more closely at how the test is administered, who is administering it, what is being used to administer the test. It's different in 4th and 5th grade than it is in the early grades. So that's another piece to this too. And you just mentioned something else too. I would speak to, you know, I can remember last year, the year before, and I know Mike was strongly identifying this. There were concerns, and that's why we wanted to bring the students back around reading, you know, and how our students were struggling with reading and how much we were falling behind. I think we see a little of the residual effects of COVID in these scores, but I'm not going to lay everything on that. You know, I think that we've been kind of watching some of these scores going down in recent years. I think the test represents the way we're supposed to move as far as assessing students in reading and what's going to be the priority, in a way that this hasn't been the case in how we and other districts across the nation have been teaching reading. You know, there's a new way, or a different approach. I shouldn't say a new way, but definitely a different approach, and what's being advocated as the best research-based approach to teaching reading. So we're learning, our children are learning. I feel positive in that we're moving forward with this. I think we're really on the right track right now. I truly do feel that way. And I think we have the investment definitely of our current administrator, John over in Berlin, our literacy coach, and we're certainly going to be, that's something that I feel that we're going to be looking at when we have a new person in place over in Boylston as well. It'll be important too. So Any other?
Carol,
Yeah, Mike.
I just wanted to add something. Most of my questions were answered through your responses to everybody else. Thank you. I read your full report and thanks for putting that together. I understand a little bit better right now. I'm still not quite satisfied with it because when I look at these, 80% of fifth grade, if we're testing on this score, I know your explanation of how the score is used and how this process is used, but if we're testing it and it's one of only 2 scores that are presented to the committee, then it's obviously important. So when 80% aren't meeting the standard, 63% of first graders, over half of third graders, fourth graders, 63, all these large, over half of the classes not meeting them, it does give me concern. And it's not to say that I don't think that something's being done about it. I know you guys are doing something about it and continuing to do something about it. Adam asked the question that I was going to ask, and what resources are needed beyond what you have now to improve this even faster. Going back to one of our earlier statements and about the budget, I know that you're going to address this during the budget process, but through the budget subcommittee, we're trying to be a little bit more aggressive with that sort of discussion. And one of the things as the committee that we just talked about in our self-evaluation was community engagement. I mean, what better topic to engage the community on than our kids can't read? And we need to do something about that. And we need more resources, and that translates to budget and more teachers and more tutors and all that. So, anything that we can do to improve this situation, whether it's, I know you mentioned that we're at the top, or we're ahead of the curve because other schools aren't going to that. And that's all well and good, but ahead of the curve at the level we're at is still not really in a great spot from the numbers that I see that are being reported to us. So anything we can do to get this moving through our budget subcommittee, through our community outreach and engagement parts to get more people on board. I mean, there's 23 attendees on the list right now here watching this and listening to this. It's more than I've seen in the last year attending a meeting. So maybe those people are listening and they're going to start really realizing something. But so I think something needs to be done more urgently than not about this. When I started looking at these numbers a month or 2 ago, I know they came out in March, and it really kind of struck me. I'm glad that it's being brought up now and being brought to the public's attention through this. And I really liked how you wrote that report for us tonight. And I hope to see more information like that more often. It would be great.
Yeah. And
Thank
Mike, I appreciate that. And I this is where we're at. This is the honest
Yeah.
point that we're at. I mean, and when I say we're ahead of districts, just in general of just in how the fact that we are addressing this through a different approach to reading that's research-based, but that doesn't make it all right. You know what I mean? That doesn't, we have issues here. And you're right, we need to find ways to do this now. There is an urgency connected to this. So I need to do some thinking about that. I think about your question and Adam's question about what we need for those supports. I do think it's additional resources as far as perhaps, staff to address this. I also think, and I added this as the last piece that in the report, and it's something I talked to Stephanie Woodward about, who is the new literacy coach, and John. I think we also need to do an education with parents about ways that you can support your children at home. I'll give you one example. I put it in, then I took it out of the report. John and I were talking about this. There was always that idea when you went to the bookstore, you wanted to find that just right book, right? Everything was about get that just right book and the levels that the kids are at and so on. That's nice. And it's fun. Like we all like to read just right material, right? Sometimes like that's not on the level, like it's not something we have to think about. Like it's just kind of fun reading or whatever. But actually we need to be finding books and materials for our students that push them a little bit, that add something more to their reading, to push them just that bit more. And that's how they start to really develop that vocabulary. That's how they start to be more fluent readers. But as a parent, I would say even when my children were young, I wouldn't know how to go about doing that. What kinds of things could we do at home around reading, reading aloud? with our children, listening to them read, taking turns. So I think that's something I talked with Steph about, and we're actually going to meet this week about setting up parent opportunities similar to what Joey Flournoy was doing in math, that she can offer workshops, that we offer things at the schools that parents can come to learn how to do this at home. And I think that's key. We can do a lot, and we're responsible for doing a lot as educators, but I also see that those educators are at home, and that's where our children are going to really benefit when they're getting this support at home as well.
Yeah, I attended one of Mr. Flournoy's math parent
Yeah.
events, and yeah, I got a lot out of it, and I think the same for reading would be fantastic. I mean, any additional interaction you can get with these teachers and parents, because you're exactly right. Ever since 2020, parents are more teachers in the home than ever before. That became abundantly clear. So yeah, anything you could do for that, I think the rest of the committee probably would support that too.
Yeah, and an abundance of questions came out of that time too, Mike, right? About what's being taught, how are they being taught, how do teachers do this in class, how am I supposed to do this at home?
Yeah.
So it was a really challenging time, but I think that we can bring that together across the board and work as a team, right, in partnership with parents in each of the schools.
Thank you.
And even the middle, and I don't discount also the middle school as well. So that's going to be a key area that we're looking at next. So are there any other questions around that piece? I'll just move briefly into the crisis team update. So we meet at least twice a year formally with as a crisis team, and that involves the police and fire chiefs from each of the towns, the administrative team, and also any of the officers who are involved in a kind of a informal resource officer capacity or head officers. And so we met the end of July, and we revisited some of the topic. We talked about the SRO, and I know Jeff wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about that. So we were discussing that topic. We also had updates. I think in the spring, I had included some updates we wanted done this summer, and one of those obviously was the film on the additional film on the interior doors of the buildings, and I believe that was completed in July. We have updated the ALICE training that we do. You might hear it referred to as Navigate 360. We updated our subscription with that organization. Several of us recertified as trainers for that program. But we will be having the staff all recertify in that area so that they are doing online training. We also decided as a team that we will have expectations in writing in place for teachers, for actually all staff in the buildings beginning this year, expectations around physical space, certain things, do's and don'ts, and definitely more drills that we're going to be holding in various areas, various topics, not just intruders in the building. I mean, that's a significant high profile area, but we need to approach this as far as other possible crises that may occur in the building, similar to what we do with fire drills. We all know, we understand what to do in a fire drill. If we heard one right now, we'd all, move out of the buildings in a certain way. We need to prepare our students that way, unfortunately, but we do, for those kinds of situations where they have to make decisions or listen to others making decisions about moving out of the buildings or staying in place, just tools that they have that are becoming not just what schools need or what students need in schools, but really, as one officer said to us, or one police chief, these are now becoming life skills, skills that they can take with them, whether they're in the mall or university or just outdoor concert areas. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in, but we owe it to our students to be able to have that kind of training for them so that they can think in the moment or follow as the younger children, be able to follow those leaders in the classroom to get them safely evacuated or safely stay in place. So we are going to have those expectations. And those are some of the things that we talked about putting in place. So we're working on that right now for the start of the school year. The police chiefs will be joining us on the first day back to school for staff, and addressing some of these topics with them as well, and also following up in subsequent staff meetings in each of the individual schools. So teachers can ask questions, and then we'll begin the training frequently, the drills frequently throughout the year. So we'll have a schedule in place for that as well. So that was the outcome of our crisis team. I'm always grateful for those officers who join us, those chiefs who take their time from their work. And they were running in and out during that because they were getting calls as they were with us, but they're so grateful to have them and have that partnership with them and to work together. So questions around that? Jeff, I don't know if you're on, if you wanted to speak at this point around I know you had mentioned the SROs or.
Yeah, just a couple things. We met, and I know Chief Annunziata had done a study and thought that we would be able to that he would be able to assign one officer between Tohoto and BES. But since then, a few things happened, and he will not be able to do that. So an SRO, Tohoto and BES would require him, I believe, we're going to be speaking to the select board next week, but I believe that's going to would require him to hire a new officer. So I don't know if that's something that is going to be feasible or not. So we would have been able to do it. I mean, it always becomes a question. Nobody wants to say we don't need one. God forbid something happen, and nobody wants to be the one to say, well, we didn't need one. And I'm certainly not going to stand here and say that either. But I will say this: there are things that as educators we know how to do, and there's things we don't know about. We know about educating kids. We know about adolescent psychological development. That's the stuff we know. That's why we hire teachers. That's why we hire school psychologists. We have a better chance of identifying a student who's having difficulty and may hurt themselves or hurt somebody else in school than an additional officer in that school would be. That's not to say an officer in a school would not be something that would be welcome. It's to say, on a limited budget, I will always hire a new psychologist. I will always hire someone who can sit in the cafeteria at lunch and look out over all of the students and see if they can identify those students who are sitting in a corner by themselves, watch a student who may get bullied. Oftentimes those kids who are isolated become the ones who do bad things, again, to themselves or to other people. So I don't know where this discussion ends up going. It'd be great to have an SRO in the building, no question. But we have, as educators, we have a certain expertise, and we shouldn't be asked to weigh in on every situation that has to do with those schools, even that's beyond our expertise. I guess our opinion is one thing, but I'll always go with hiring more educators. I'll go with hiring educators, teachers who have been trained and psychologists who are trained. So given my choice, that's where I'll always go. I know Carol will agree with me on this. Again, not to say we don't need one. I don't know where this goes, but I did just want to, put that out there, because the select board's going to ask that question. So that's going to be my answer to them, just like it is tonight. So, and I don't know if any of you have any questions about that, or you want to.
Jeff, I think that's a great point. And I certainly agree with you on everything you said there. And I think that the psychological components of what we've seen happen in some of these school shootings is probably more of an issue than trying to get a police officer there to stop someone from coming in the door. I do know, though, that there are certainly members of the community. There's a petition going around, I know, that has quite a few signatures trying to advocate for there to be a police officer in the buildings. I want both, right? And I think we'd all like both, but at the end of the day, it becomes a budget question, and it really becomes a budget question for the towns. I don't expect that you're going to go hire a police force to, the BBRSD, police force there and have them report to you. It's a question of whether or not the towns have the budget and are willing to fund one or both of those things. And I think that that's a really reasonable approach that you just said, and I tend to agree with it. I also think there are probably opportunities we can still explore to make the buildings themselves more physically secure, and look at opportunities to have a stronger police presence in and around the buildings throughout the day. But I certainly look forward to that meeting with the select. When is that, Lori? Two weeks, is that right? In Boylston? Sorry, you muted, Lori.
22nd.
Yeah, okay,
The 22nd, yep.
okay. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and you know what, as a high school administrator, I had an SRO who was not in the building full-time, but had a dedicated space in the school. There's a certain amount of comfort, I gotta tell you, when you're in there to having an officer in the school. I would think, we didn't ask our teachers, I don't believe we asked that in a survey, but I think most of them would agree with that. As long as they're not getting involved in discipline and things like that, which they can't by law. They are a great, there's a comforting effect that they do have. And if you get the right officer, it certainly works. So, I agree with you, Adam. I'd love to have both. I'd love to hire more psychologists and an officer, but I don't think that's the option,
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I almost, in my mind, I think is there a hybrid solution that's been tried? Is the psychologist armed? I don't know, like, what is the model that could help do both things, both keep the school physically protected and, recognize those students who need additional support. Or a police officer who's well versed in, that second part. I think that as we think about budget constraints, especially the budget constraints to the previous conversation about making sure kids can read, I think there's a lot on the table here in terms of the needs we have across school safety, reading, and many other things.
And there are actually some options. I'll talk to the committee about it in executive sessions, some things. There are a couple options. So
okay.
When we get there, I'll if you would remind me, Adam.
Yep.
I will. I'll talk about it.
Thank you.
Jeff, do you want to do your presentation now?
Yep. Okay. So first things first here, I'm gonna read my letter. 30 years, I didn't think I'd ever read this, but here we go. Dear members of the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee, after much consideration, I've decided to retire my position as superintendent for the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District upon the conclusion of the 2022-2023 school year. My last day will be June 30th, 2023. It has been an honor to serve our school community and our school committee in particular as your educational leader. When I think back on the journey towards this role, I had hoped that one day I would be able to both successfully serve and retire in a single district. Not only have I accomplished that goal through your support, but it has been a tremendous learning experience for me personally as well. I am grateful for the opportunity I've come to know and work with such a talented group of educators and a parent community who is committed to excellence in their schools. While the school year ahead will bring many changes, I am confident that our district will continue to thrive and grow. Thank you for this opportunity, and please know that I will continue to work on behalf of all of our students, staff, and families in the months ahead. Respectfully, Jeff Sange. So that's my resignation. It's not a resignation, it's a retirement. I'm actually not going anyplace after this, but maybe Miami. But that's it. I saw Ken Cleveland on there. So Ken, I'm out this week with COVID. So if you have any questions, catch me towards the end of the week. So that's that part. The next part was the new hiree list. I don't know. You all have it in front of you, but I do want to say a couple of things. There's nothing unusual about what we see on that list. Last couple of years, the state has seen the same trend. People tended to stay where they were, and people weren't hiring. It was a risky move to move, when you're in the middle of hybrid, to now pick up another hybrid class of kids you don't know. I think that the exception was retirees. There were some people who just were at the end of their line and just decided they would go. And those were and a lot of the teachers were older teachers who felt more vulnerable. So they're more apt, they're 65 years old. They're at that part where they're thinking, okay, if I get COVID, they're saying this is going to be really bad. This is especially early on. Better that I retire. And we had a couple of those. Where we were a little bit unusual is our administrators. But I can tell you that, we had one administrator who probably would have stayed another year. We had, there was no one who left who wouldn't have left in the middle of it, wasn't looking, didn't want to have other opportunities, but said, listen, I'm not going to leave in the middle of the pandemic. So if anything, what I will say about our teachers and our administrators is their loyalty to the district, because I know superintendents who central office staff and principals in the middle of the thing said, I'm going someplace else. None of us did that. So that this happened all at once really wasn't a surprise to me. I wasn't panicking. The fact that the notices were given when they were, that put us in a little bit of a bind. But there's some restructuring we want to do in the district, and we've wanted to do it for a while, and this will be that year to sort of restructure things, to see where we are. It goes along, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about this in executive session. It'll follow with what Carol has talked about in terms of the literacy, in terms of using data, in terms of those things. It gives us a good opportunity to look for those leaders who are well-versed in those areas. Not that ours weren't, but we will be looking for some very, very specific things when we hire the next group of administrators. Where our profession is not unusual is that there are some specialties that are where there are shortages. And when you have a shortage, you have people who get to call the shots. It's no different. I can't say I blame them. When we have that, we have it with our nurses, good nurses, but they're in very short supply. They get to go basically where they want to go. And that won't always be the case. At one time it was, math or science teachers. Actually, there's still a shortage of those, but you can find them. But there was a time where you just couldn't. Guidance counselors and school psychologists were another area where was a shortage. So these are cyclical. I mean, we're not seeing anything that I haven't seen in 30 years, right? I mean, you see these patterns, they come around, they come and go. So we're not seeing anything that's unusual. I know, Jessica read her letter. I respect what she has to say. She doesn't have the framework to make those kind of assumptions. And I know from the outside, it looks like maybe to the community without everybody's jumping ship. Most of those things can be explained, and the rest of them are just the normal movement that happens. And we're just coming off 2.5 years that we haven't seen in 100 years. So a lot of weird things happen. But I can assure you that there's no, I haven't seen anything here that, you know, I have discussions with these people and I don't see anything that's unusual. You always have a couple people who are leaving because they don't like you. They don't like something that's going on. That's normal. That's fine. But I just wanted to point that out. And do any of you have any questions about that?
I have a quick question for you, Jeff. So I'll take your word for it in terms of this being somewhat cyclical and normal. I can vouch for most other industries are experiencing something very similar to what you were showing in that document. And we can speculate as to why, but it's certainly not uncommon in other industries. My question is, does the district do any type of exit interview with outgoing staff to understand, you know, some of their reasons for departure, and can we learn anything from that information if there is an exit interview?
What we do, I do it with the administrators, and the principals usually have discussions with their staff to find out why they're leaving. That's why with the administrators, you know, I can't talk about personnel issues, but I can tell you that nothing there was surprising. And you know, if I encourage people to, you know, like we had teachers to go, like a teacher who wants to be an assistant principal. That's a normal move, you know, and it's not like I didn't know that was going to happen. That's what you want to happen. And you say, well, we have those positions open here. Like, that's true, but it's very, very difficult to be a principal or an assistant principal in a place where you were a teacher. You know, just ask Ms. Tusseri, who has said that many times in public, that it's a very difficult move, and she did a great job with it. But you know, it's a fine line you walk when you've had that one relationship, and then it changes to now you're their supervisor. So short answer is yes, we do, and that's why I can tell you in all honesty that with the exception of maybe a couple of the people on that list, there were no surprises.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. And certainly we understand and have to respect and will respect personal reasons for people to leave. I just wonder if there's a way that we can shed a little bit of light into that without, you know, divulging personal information that can help the community understand that there's not a mass exodus from the Berlin-Boylston School District, but there are logical, rational reasons of some of the turnover that we're seeing.
Well, and that's why I wanted to point out the letter that Jessica read, because that's a common feeling of people when they don't do the exit interviews, when they're not in the field, to say, whoa, what happened? All of a sudden, all of these people are gone. I understand it. I completely respect that. But again, you know, I can go back more than a year with conversations I've had with administrators. One in particular who said, listen, I won't leave. I'm looking, but I won't leave in the middle of this. I mean, you can't have anything but respect for somebody like that. And, you know, the administrators are left. It wouldn't be difficult to figure out who it was. But, you know, one of them actually said that to me. And I know the others have had the same sentiment, that they weren't going to jump ship in the middle of this. And so, and a lot of districts didn't have that. A lot of districts have administrators who bailed. So I think on a whole that our administrators and our teachers are very, very dedicated to the district. I mean, we have teachers who stay here a long time, and not at the superintendent level. I mean, we go through those certainly. I mean, but at the you know, the building principal level, they stay in the buildings, and you know, they have good relationship with the teachers. So, you know, this is my seventh district. I don't. If there was something odd going on here, I mean, I just wrote my resignation letter. It's not like I have anything to hide here. I mean, I'd tell you. I'd have told you before, actually, and I think anybody here knows that. at least to say, we got some work to do. We'll monitor it this year, we'll certainly monitor it this year and see what's going on. But my gut feeling is that as long as we don't have another weird, as long as we get back to something that even remotely resembles normal, we won't see people leaving at that rate, at least administrators, so.
Don't use the word remotely, Joe. When you talk about school, come on.
Let it not go unsaid either.
Yeah,
Jeff.
yeah, I
Congratulations.
take that one back.
Jeff, let it not go unsaid. Congratulations on your retirement.
Oh,
Did you
thank
say it was
you.
30 years?
Yeah, 30 years.
That's incredible. Thank you for that devotion.
Jeff, I was just going to add a comment. I think we're all seeing and hearing from parents in particular, especially parents whose child was, on move up day, finding they're going into Mr. Zangi's class, and then a month later, Mr. Zangi's moving to Princeton, to pick a town. And so I think that there is understandably a sense of anxiety, for lack of a better term, on behalf of parents when maybe you're excited about your child going into a particular teacher's class because their older sibling had that child, and then kind of the rug gets pulled out from under them, and they're sitting here today, in some cases, still not knowing who that teacher is going to be. So I'd love some information from you on where we are in terms of filling some of these full-time teacher roles that are still open, and where are we with the BES principal search, which I think a lot of people are concerned about and interested in.
Well, in terms of the teachers hiring, we're still going through that process. I know Carol, I put Carol in charge of overseeing. We have a couple of teachers to hire at BES. I know she's interviewing tomorrow, and Ace did a lot of hiring. I mean, he was here I got to give the guy credit. He was here to the last day. And in fact, he was working here during the day and doing emails at his new district, which will go unmentioned at night. So he really, really did get most of the hiring done. And so there's a couple we have to do there. There was still like a tutor we have to hire. We should be full staffed in terms of teachers, paras, that it's not unusual for us to start and not have all the paras we need, or not have all the tutors. That is not unusual. I'm in my 5th year. It's every single year, I talk to the principals. It's like, okay, we're going to have to get somebody in there just temporarily until we hire somebody. Because, the thing is with those jobs is, as you know, they don't pay a lot. So what happens is someone takes the job, it's a new position for them, and they're still looking. And so it's 2 weeks before school or a week before school, and they take another job, and that's just the way it is. And listen, that's how we get tutors. We give them a better offer and they come to us. We try not to do it with administrators and stuff like that, but with those positions, it's just the way that it happens. So we'll be fully staffed. I'm confident that we will on opening day, as much as we usually are. In terms of the principal, interviews were today. I have COVID. Obviously, I wasn't there for them. We were going to do it, basically go through all the interviews and then just pick one, on a short time frame. Instead, we took more of a traditional approach. I know Carol and John, and we had someone else there interviewing candidates, and they will, I have a meeting with Carol tomorrow morning, in which we'll go over the candidates, and we'll talk about 2 that she's going to bring forward as finalists that she and I will interview next week. And we'll pick someone as interim for the year. Of course, we would love to have an interim that is good enough that they apply for the job. I mean, that's the goal. We don't want someone to just take a seat. We want to hire someone, like when we're hiring these people, in my mind, I'm thinking, is this someone who could be the principal of the school? And if we don't find someone like that, I mean, I won't hire someone that's not that person. So it's an interim job. They know it's an interim job, but they also know, it'd be great if you could be the permanent person too. We'll have a process, but you know, we really hope you're the one, you know, so it gives them incentive. It gives us some incentive to hire as an interim the right person. So that'll be next week, so we should have somebody. I will tell you this about this district, and that this will go to the hiring piece that has been brought up. I got a call last week when I was on vacation, but I got a call from a superintendent that said, do you have any extra principals do you have any extra resumes? Do you have any resumes that, you know, that for principals that you think I could use or I could interview, I could call? I said, well, I'm going through the process, so I don't have any extra resumes right now. I said, why? She said, I'm looking for somebody. I said, how many, you put it out? Yep. I said, how many did you get? One. I said, did you interview them? She said, I wouldn't even bother. We got eight to nine, because we had one or two come in after, and we interviewed 5 today. So it says something for our district that people want to be here, and they'd want to be here more than a lot of other places. So that we have, you know, I know Carol was interviewing all day today, that we have that many people who are interested in this district and that school in particular says something.
That's
So,
great to hear.
yeah.
Yeah, and I hope you told that person that the one thing we don't have to give up are any actual principals right now.
No, we don't have
We
any.
have no principals to donate
No,
anywhere
when
else.
we get
until
done
we
with this
get ours.
process, I'll probably send over a few names. You know, and I know Cal has them all, so there might be a few we send over, but we don't have any extra right now till we get ours, so. That's the hiring piece.
So Jeff, we've got 24, I'm guessing, parents on the Zoom here. I'm one of these parents that's in the situation. I don't know who my kid's teacher is going to be. So we know we're probably not going to have a principal in that's going to have ample time. Actually, I don't know who either of my kids' teacher is going to be. We know we're not going to have a principal in ample time. You know, like ACE would start in August, we'd get the kindergarten letter and we would know, you know, so when can these parents who are waiting to find out, you know, I know Mrs. So-and-so left, when can they expect to hear something from the district so their kid knows on the first day of school, this is the name of your teacher, this is who you're going to have? Or is it just going to be, we walk into school the first day and it's nice to meet you? I'm just wondering.
No, hopefully we'll have teachers in place, you know, before that, so we can send something. It'll come from the school. I mean, so obviously the schedule's been done. So, you know, Miss Koziak's on the list.
Right.
So once we hire somebody, the school will send something out and we'll talk a little bit about the teacher and, you know, but that'll come from the school. So as soon as that happens, like I said, I know Carol's interviewing for that position and I think one other. And as soon as they get that position hired, we got a lot of candidates, and Miss Koziak, obviously a big loss for us, but we'll hire someone who's qualified and the right person for that school. And as soon as we get it, we'll send it out.
So hopefully like the week before. I mean, we've got 2.5 weeks. So we would hope the week before school starts, everybody's going to get letters and you're going to go into at least a week before knowing who your teacher is.
Yeah, you know, we're running out of runway, that's for sure. But
Exactly, yeah.
you know, again, you know, we get these when you get notices that late.
Right.
You know, you're still going to interview. You got to still make sure you get the right person. It makes no sense to hire someone a year later. You got to let them go. So we want to get the right person in there, someone who makes the same investment that you know, our teachers made. So we'll do the best we can. You know, I know it's tough for the little ones who, you know, they expect to see a certain teacher, but you know, I will tell you, kids adjust better than adults, so they'll make the adjustment faster than the parents will. And so.
All right. Good to know. Yeah, I mean, it's no one's fault. It is what it is.
Yeah,
But it doesn't make it any less stressful for, you know, all of the kids that were supposed to have Mrs. Koziak and they were so excited, or all of the kids that were supposed to have Mrs. Murphy and were so excited. It's just a really tough situation.
sure is. Yeah, well, I know, we understand that. Like, well, again, we'll do the best we can to get someone on board and get the information out, so the, you know, the anxiety will come down a little. Again, not for the kids, but for the parents.
Right.
We'll make
Both.
sure we send you out some Xanax or something. Keep you
I mean,
calm.
it's both. It's both the kids and the parents. I think there's a lot of kids that, you know, they go to move up day, they meet their teacher, you know, and especially with Mrs. Murphy and Mrs. Koziak, who are very, you know, it's not like we're losing people that were in the school for like a year. These are
Yeah.
people that are veterans that everybody knows and loves. So I just think that it's a combination of that, you know, and you know, I know there was a few other names on the list. I don't know if there's been anything else recently. I know there's been lots of gossip going on. But I'm taking your list as Bible, so.
Yeah, it is. And good thing, you
Yep.
know, that I didn't put it together. Christy did. So you,
Yeah.
that's, so
Oh,
you
then I
take
definitely
as
trust it.
Bible. If it was mine, I would say, yeah, maybe it's a little suspect, but you know, Christy put it together. You can bet that it's right on.
Yeah.
So, well, we're working on it. We'll be okay when we open up. Don't worry.
Good to know.
Can I ask you a question, Jeff, on that list? My question is about the tutor for BMS for the reading. Is that, I didn't see that. Is that gonna be a shared position now, or is that, no, Carol?
Yeah, Jeff, do you mind if I
No,
answer?
go
that?
ahead. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, so John Campbell and Stephanie Woodward just interviewed and have selected two candidates that they just brought forward. I think Chrissy probably got the paperwork today or yesterday, so we're in good shape with those two individuals. One is familiar to Berlin, and one we feel very strongly is a good candidate for Boylston as well. So
Great. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, we, Julie, just that was one of our options. I mean, again, we want the right people. And sometimes for those kind of positions, they're unusual positions, so they're tough to fill. And that was one of the options to say, okay, if we know we got one person who's good, it's better to have one person that's good and share them until we can find something than hire one person who's good and then throw somebody else in. So, fortunately, we were able to find somebody, but we would have had someone to cover both until we did, so.
Jeff, it sounds like Mr. Campbell's working a little overtime here to help us get some of these positions filled at both schools. Let's make sure, if that's the case, let him know how much we appreciate that as the last man standing.
Yeah, no, he is definitely has been putting his time in this summer.
Yeah.
Not only with that stuff, but with a lot of the literacies, a lot of the stuff, you probably heard his name a dozen times when Carol.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's a reason for that. And again, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in during executive session.
Thanks, Jeff.
There was something on my report about my goals. I didn't put it on there, so my guess is you put it on there? I wasn't planning to talk about my goals this early, is there? I mean, I had some ideas about what my goals would be this year. But I didn't, there was nothing I mentioned that I wanted to talk about. Is it something you want me to sort of put in writing and kind of send to you, or? I'm
No,
not sure what you wanted.
Yeah, I know that is confusing, Jeff. I apologize. We wanted to kind of talk to you about what we thought your goal, like what you think your goals might center around the topics and the direction we might want it to see it go into as well. So just kind of like before you actually write your goals and get attached to them, for us to get an idea of where you see your goals this year, and then maybe, you know, with different things from the evaluation, where we might think a goal should be if it's not on your radar.
Okay, well, you know, given our circumstances here and given, you know, our administrators, one of my goals has to be the mentoring of the new administrators coming on board. I mean, that's going to take enormous amount of time, not just from the office, but in the schools. And again, we have a new business person who is not familiar with our system. Our pupil personnel, our director of pupil personnel, who was still relatively new, who I still do a lot of work with. Along with that is the process of hiring new administrators, and part of that will be, working with the leadership team to decide what we really want to see. We'll do some surveying early on with the community to see what they want to see. No different than when you hired a new superintendent, there was a survey that went out and, what do you want to see in your new superintendent? What do you think are the important things? Because this will help direct the kind of questions we ask when we interview. There's a putting together of those teams. We're already starting to get some interest. So it's not a short process. It takes time to get that together. That's a few months, that whole process of surveying, figuring out what we want to see internally, getting the right fit. Again, you don't want to hire someone who a year into it says, I made the wrong decision. This is not the place for me. We talked about the restructuring of the middle high school front office. I don't know if that's something you wanted me to talk about public. I know I've mentioned it to some staff. I've already started to collect some data on schools that are, there's one of the issues there has been sort of ongoing, and it's inherent in the way the building is structured. You got a middle and a high school in one building. It's very unusual. We start to put a list together of how many schools in the Commonwealth actually look like that. It's not a lot. And so I need to go through a process of getting in touch with those superintendents and talking to those principals if I can, to see how they structure their front office, how it works. There are different possibilities. Could have 2 assistant principals and 1 principal. That seems to be the one that works most often. But again, actually the teachers I've talked to have said to me that we've said that from the beginning, that it should be like that. Mm-hmm. So, this isn't exactly a new something Zangi came up with, that's for sure. But if you're in there enough, you get a sense for the something that's not, there's something lacking, and it's no reflection on the administrators who are in there now. You can only do so much, and you can only specialize in so many things. Middle school's a very, very different place than a high school. When you talk to a middle school principal, they're a very different breed than a high school principal, and it's just the way it is. And again, it's not to take Ms. Stugels, Ms. Tusseri have done an unbelievable job there, but they can only do so much with what they have. And I think it's evident to the staff there too. I mean, some of the senior staff I've talked to have said just that. We've been saying this since the building opened. So there's that piece. I really think this year we need to do a more extensive, or I need to leave the district presenting a more extensive enrollment projection, something that the new superintendent can accurately work off. I was told when I came here that our enrollment was going down. As I drove down Sewell Road and saw nothing but construction. And every official in town told me that. And although we did have I have to tell you, there was a little downward blip. But, a downward blip on paper and then what you see when you drive through town, those are 2 different stories. I needed the job. So during the interview, I didn't say anything, but those are the areas I was looking at. There is one more area that, again, I have written down here to talk to you about in executive session. So if you don't mind, I will wait until then to discuss the last piece, which I think will be a big one.
Hey, Jeff, oh, sorry, Adam, do you want to go?
Hey, Bob.
Well, some of the things you mentioned kind of start to form a common denominator in my head here. And the fact is, it's not often as a member of the school committee that I'll be able to talk to a superintendent with an outgoing superintendent with 30 years of experience, and we're going to have a year with him as before he retires. And so the common denominator I'm hearing in some of the things you mentioned to me feels like almost like a transition plan that maybe outlines your vision for the district, right? I mean, you've been captaining the ship for 30 years. You have a vision, you have goals, thoughts about restructuring, benchmarking, et cetera. And I wonder if there's a way that we could use the next 12 months somehow to get that on paper, right? If you were to continue the efforts and the direction that you've taken with the district, what would you want to see happen? What would you see, 3 years, 5 years from now? What should we start doing that we're not? What should we stop doing? What should we continue doing? I wonder if it's something to consider, just building out a transition plan that can help us, maintain some continuity, hear candidly from you based on your experience, what's working well in the district and what we ought to look to shift significantly, going forward with the addition of your successor.
Well, one of the reasons that we had a 5-year district improvement plan that hasn't ended the 5 years. We worked this summer on a 3-year district improvement plan just for that reason. So we have some things in there we looked at, and it was a weird plan. We got off to a great start and we got a lot done, considering we had 2 years of COVID. We have a great staff, and they certainly worked to get this plan completed mostly without even knowing it. They were taking part in it. But when I start talking to the leadership team about my possibility of leaving after the end of this year, we all decided, why don't we put a 3-year plan together that works sort of as a transition plan. And then, so that's one of the things, again, I'm going to talk about one of the things during executive session, but also all of this hiring and restructuring is really part of that.
Okay. Good. Well, I'd be happy to look at that. Sounds like it might be, a lot of what I'm describing.
Jeff, to your first question about kind of where this agenda item come from, I pushed Lori to put this on there. And my reason was, as I completed my superintendent evaluation for the first time as a school committee member this spring and looked back at the goals we had approved in the fall, I found myself frustrated that it felt like enough meat to some of those goals, but the things you just spoke to already for me are much more in line with the goals I would have in my mind to give you for the upcoming year. And I think your retirement changes some of these thoughts and some of the maybe things we want to have you focus on. But I think that I'd like to see these goals be really well developed, concrete, and I think in place a lot earlier than they were last year. And that's, I think, part of the reason we're here meeting on August 9th is to give us an opportunity to start this conversation with you today so that we can get these goals in place very early in the school year. And we're all on the same page as to what they are, both your goals and the school committee goals at the same time. So I think this has been helpful to hear your initial thoughts on these things. I think that all of us probably have additional ones, or I even have some, as you talk about, Tohoto restructuring, there's budget implications to that, right? And so how does that align with, our need to go get more funding for the schools? So I think this is helpful, and I appreciate kind of your initial thoughts there. And I think that it'll position us all better to get good, concrete, easy to evaluate goals later when we come to kind of your final evaluation at the end of the academic year.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I think, these things, they weren't something that just came out of my head because I was thinking, okay, they want to hear something, I got to tell them something. we've been thinking about this for the last really 6 months.
Yeah.
We've been thinking about this and start thinking, well, what has to be done? Of course, on my list then was only, sort of the restructuring and the enrollment. Once our administrators start leaving, well, that added that stuff. And
Yep.
so I'll put that stuff down in writing, flesh it out a little bit, and I'll send it. I should have that. I'll send that out to you like in the next couple of weeks for you to take a look at, and then we can work on them and, tell me what you want to add or subtract, or, if you think that's important or not.
And are you open in the meantime, Jeff, to getting us to send, if any of us have some individual thoughts on kind of things we want to see happen next year, getting those via email so you can see how you might want to incorporate them as they come across from us?
Sure, no
Just to
problem.
make it
Yep.
efficient. Okay.
Yep. Maybe if you could send them to Lori so I could get,
Yep.
so I don't miss them.
Good idea.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Okay. We are going to move on to item number 4 under reports, the negotiation subcommittee update. Megan and I attended, and Carol and Jeff and a few others attended a meeting on Wednesday, June 22nd from 8 until 1. The negotiation committee agreed to a 3-year deal with an increase in wages as well as some contractual changes and obligations. And that's actually why we're having an executive session at the end of our meeting, or one of the reasons. It's for the school committee to review what the negotiation committee felt was appropriate. And then we will return to open session afterwards to vote on the amended contract. Any questions? Yeah. Adam, do you have an election subcommittee update for us?
Yeah, just real quick, anyone who was taking out papers and gotten signatures has at this point had to have gotten those signatures certified and handed over to the town clerks. Those papers are due back with the district clerk, which is me, by 5 p.m. on August 23rd. I do know that one person has already submitted them to me via Christie. I've submitted my own to myself. And so others who have taken out papers and got certified signatures, I was hoping to collect several of them from you all tonight at a meeting, but we'll figure out how to kind of get those into either Christie's hands or my hands so that we can then inform the Secretary of State by the 25th of August as to who our candidates are. I'm not really able to speak to who the candidates are as a whole at this point because I haven't received all those papers yet, and someone could get signatures certified and then change their mind and never hand them in to the district clerk. But at this point, it looks like from what I know, we will have candidates for every position, and there will be ballots with names on them come November.
Thank you, Adam. You've done a lot of work on this. It's not been, it was not an easy job, and you've handled it quite well. And
Mr. Topman
kept
as
us on
well,
point.
kind of got handed over to me as the clerk when the clerking started happening, but I think going into it for a period of a good 6 months, a lot of calls with Mike and I and our former chair.
Actually, you are correct. Mike was really instrumental as well. And I'm just really pleased with the way the two of you, Adam had written to me prior to being a school committee member, being upset about the election not happening. And we wrote back and forth to one another. And when he jumped on the school committee, he got appointed to the election subcommittee. And you know what, Adam, you've done a phenomenal job.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Yeah, Adam's been on top of everything, Lori. This is his baby for sure.
There will be an election.
There will be.
It will be, finally.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, the business items. Could I have a motion to approve the policy AC non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Mike, discussion.
I have a question, Lori, not specific to this one, but the combination of these 3 next policies we're going to be approving or reviewing tonight. So one of the things that I am concerned with when it comes to any of these policies is the pull through of the policy document into actually operationalizing that policy within a building in a handbook, whatever it might be. So one of the things I looked at today, and thanks Christy for getting it in front of us, was the Tohoto handbook specific to the, there's a table in there of consequences should someone violate harassment and harass either a staff member or a student. And one of the things that just kind of popped out to me that I'd like the administration to look at again is that, the consequence of harassing a staff member is actually more severe than the consequence of harassing a fellow student, and whether or not that should be the case, or we should treat the two things equally when it comes to the actual implementation of it. I know that that's the purview of the team, but I think that's just one thing that popped out to me in looking at it. And the second thing would be just to make sure that as we approve these policies, to ensure that they get appropriately pushed down into those handbooks, wherever else they need to be, and in front of the right administrators, so everyone's aware of and informed on what the policies are and how they should implement them. And we had some hiccups with that when it came to COVID stuff too, where we put a policy in place and there was confusion at the building level sometimes on kind of what does this actually mean in practice. So I just want to make sure that we're paying close attention to that.
Yeah, Adam, that's a great point, because I started reading the Tohoto handbook and it's for last year. So I don't know if we're meant to approve the last year Tohoto handbook, or if we should just, last year's over, maybe we need to update it, because it seems like that handbook, I mean, it was little things like the date and the principal name and
Jeff can speak on this, but my recollection, Megan, is that the approval of the handbook actually falls to Jeff and not us when it comes to the final, like, yes, this is the handbook. I don't know, Jeff, I thought that's what we ended up doing last year, but there was confusion on that, I know, at one point in the fall.
Right, you vote on the program of studies.
Okay.
That's the one you vote on.
Okay.
All right, so the handbook is not, we're not voting on the handbook, but somebody needs to take a look at that and give it a good update, because whatever's in there now is not.
Yes, if I may, Mrs. Grill, the high school secretary does update that handbook before the beginning of school. So I'm sure it is in process at this point, but that is the actual published handbook from last year.
Oh, all right, okay, gotcha, makes sense.
And also the school council, which has parents on there, that they're required to review that every year. So they review that handbook every year before it gets, before it becomes public again. So if there's any issues with that, it's not like that's only the administration is, we're just going to put that in there. The school council has to look at that. They're required to. So, and I know, I've had this discussion with Mr. Sari, in which I've said, do you run this by them? And yeah, they have meetings that are dedicated just to the review of the handbook. So it's not just a school deal.
Thanks.
Does
And
anyone
anybody
else?
can be part of that. So, if this is something that's a concern to you, you get on that committee and, you can raise those questions, and that can all be worked through. And you should, if you have those concerns. I mean, that's what the council's for you to get involved and to have a say on those issues that trouble you.
Jeff, is there so if I'm a parent and I want to get involved on the school council for Tohoto, do I reach out to Ms. Douglas to get that? Is my first question. Second question, is there a pathway for the school council to maybe recognize that, hey, this policy might need to be updated, let's say the bullying policy, and make sure we're informed on that so we can make those updates as well?
So the first question, yes, just let them know. I had a parent ask me about it last year. Just call the school. They'll make sure they're always looking for people, by the way. And there is a pathway. And, one of the things I would, because the school committee talks about, these communication pieces. And I think one of the things the school committee could do more of that you haven't yet, and not, I'll say this in a bad way, but you can ask for the representative for the council, for them to give a report, or ask for the principal to give a report on behalf of the school council related to an issue. And that's something you can say to the principal, is this issue, X issue, something that the council looks at? If it is, can we get a report on it? So this, now that they look at the handbook, it might be some something that you may want to, since it's come up a few times, I've noticed, to ask, can we get sort of a report on what you looked at and what you're concerned with? Because then you'll know if it even came up. So you hear all of this stuff from the community, and then you can say, well, we have a council. They didn't have a concern with this. We asked. And so then at least you have a better framework for these, when you talk about these policies, and it gives you a better idea of the inner workings of the school within your realm of authority too. So just an idea.
Is there a council for each school, Jeff, or is it just for
There
the
is.
one district?
There is.
That's great to know. Sounds like a great resource. And a great way for
Hey,
parents.
Jeff, really, I have a quick question. So the principal will write the handbook and the athletic director will write the handbook and then works with the council to make sure that it's running as is?
Well, I think the writing of it's sort of a done deal. So it's all, they really, what they look at is changes. But let's say you have an issue about something in there as a school committee member. You could always make a suggestion to the principal. Is this something you could please look at or have your council look at? And then that would be one of the things that they will look at. Now, obviously, they're volunteers just like you. So if you have a laundry list of 100 things that bother you, it's not going to get done. So, but if this issue has come up a few times, so I'm saying that like something that's come up that many times is very, very specific. It may be something you might, as a committee, want to inquire about, because then you'll have another data point, okay, now the school councils looked at it, the principals looked at it. All right, so we're hearing all this stuff from the community, but we know the council that has community members has looked at this and they think it's okay. Or it's not okay, at least you'll have another data point, and that's what I think you're looking for.
That's a good suggestion.
Great suggestion.
Is there any more discussion on policy AC?
Oh, I have one question. We have a civil rights coordinator. That's in there. I just didn't know who it was.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick is the civil rights coordinator. She's our
Thank you.
pupil personnel director.
Perfect. So she's the coordinator for all of these, then, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Christy.
Okay, anything else? All right, we're going to move, I'm sorry, we're gonna move to a vote now. All in favor, Julie, vote? I'm sorry, let me reiterate, we're going to approve policy AC non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. So I'm looking for an aye or a nay. Julie?
Aye.
Aye. Mike?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Motion to approve policy AC non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation passes. Could I have a motion to approve policy ACAB, sexual harassment policy for sexual harassment against students?
So moved.
Adam, second?
Second.
Thanks, Mike. Discussion.
I mean, I have a lot in here. I don't know if this should go to policy subcommittee. I think the language in this isn't great in some of the paragraphs. I mean, it would take a long time to go through this now. Perhaps this would be better tabled at a subcommittee meeting. I don't know the formality on that.
The subcommittee looked at it. It came directly from, these three policies both come directly from the legal office. Russ, right? So yeah, if there's any changes that want to be made, we can discuss them now, or if you want to vote to send it back to that committee with the changes, just let us know. And I guess Lori can ask Russ about them.
I would be, not that you can't do it, but I would say, I'm always very leery of wordsmithing something that's come from an attorney.
Yeah.
The,
Like
That was the
MASC.
initial discussion we had in the policy subcommittee, was that this came directly from Russ. We're not attorneys, so that's why we brought it forward for a vote.
Is this policy coming right from MASC too?
No. So this is not an MASC policy. These three are not from MASC. They might be parts of it influenced or whatever, but these are directly from Russ, his sign off, he sent them to his clients and suggested they get approved. But other policies that we bring forward that we review do come directly from MASC, but this one is not one of those.
Well, I'd just like to add in that I did ask Russ, like, why did you feel the need to, to do this? And he said, because I didn't feel that the policies that were in place were enough. He felt like this was more.
Julie, just a thought on this, nothing prevents us from approving it and then revisiting it again in the policy subcommittee at the next policy subcommittee meeting, or voting it down and having the policy subcommittee revisit it. So depending on what your changes are, I wonder if it might make sense, since, is there a policy to this point on, Russ thinks this is stronger than what was there before, right? Is what you're saying,
Right.
Mike and Lori? I
Yes.
wonder if, Julie, we can approve it and then ask the policy subcommittee to put it on an agenda for their next meeting, or maybe you and anyone else can go and kind of speak to some of those specific changes, as opposed to us trying to like amend it here
Yeah.
in this
When is the
meeting.
next subcommittee meeting, Alan?
To Lori and Mike's subcommittee. I don't know if they have a date picked.
Yeah, we haven't,
It'll be September.
yeah, I was gonna say, because it's summer, we're still getting all of our schedules together.
To be after
My,
school.
my point would be, like, if this is an improvement on what we have now, I
Yeah.
would support approving it and then also asking the policy subcommittee to revisit it again in September.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay, any more discussion?
No.
So, all right. Julie. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this correctly. All in favor of,
No, you need a roll call. You're on a Zoom meeting, Lori. Point
yeah,
of
I
order.
know, but I get it, but I just lost my place on my page. It's bad when you get old. You can't see things so well. I'm looking for approval of policy ACAB, sexual harassment policy for sexual harassment against students. Julie,
Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna say no. Okay,
Fair.
absolutely.
sorry.
No worries. Mike.
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Bob,
I,
and I am an aye as well. The motion to approve policy ACAB, sexual harassment policy for sexual harassment against students passes. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve policy JICK, harassment of students.
So moved.
Second.
Adam, second.
Second.
Mike, discussion.
I'd like to know if any members of the committee also have concerns with the language in this one, and it should also be potentially referred back to the policy subcommittee after this. Julie, do you like this one better?
I did like this one. Lots of highlights. Yeah, this one was good. Thank you.
Okay. So any more discussion? No, all right. We're going to take a vote on the motion to approve policy JICK, harassment of students. Julie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Bob.
I,
All right, the policy JICK, harassment of students has passed. I would like a motion to approve a $1,500 donation from Katie's 5K to be used for the Tohoto music program. Could I have a motion?
Moved.
Mike, second?
Second,
Bob, discussion.
I
All right,
love
besi-
any funding for the music program.
Yes,
Any more
absolutely. I was
funding
gonna
for
say,
the music program.
besides the fact that it's awesome, yeah.
good.
All right, we're going to vote. Julie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. The motion to approve $1,500 donation from Katie's 5K to be used for the Tohoto Music Program passes. Could I have a motion to approve a donation of 16 Bandit STEM gel electrophoresis systems worth $227 for Mrs. Sequeira's biology classroom from Crest Technology and Mr. Matt Meekum? Could I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Bob, second?
Second.
Megan? Discussion? All
Nice
right.
job pronouncing electrophoresis.
I know.
I would have watched it.
All right, we are going to take a vote. Julie,
Aye.
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. The donation of 16 Bandit STEM gel electrophoresis systems worth $1,000.
You're showing off now.
$27 for Mrs. Sequeira's biology classroom from Crest Technology and Mr. Matt Meekum passes. All right. Could I have a motion to approve a donation of $272.57 from the Boylston PTO for the Boylston Elementary School Library?
So moved.
Adam, second.
Second.
My discussion. Excellent. All right, we're going to take a vote. Julie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. Okay, by the way, if you wanted to know how I called on you, it was by where you were on my screen. Oh yeah, it's my little secret. Could I please have a motion to enter executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, Superintendent Zangi and Assistant Superintendent Costello, as well as to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the BBEA, with a return to open session to vote on the approval of the contract between the BBEA and BBRSD.
Sorry for
Can I have
letting you
a
get through all that, but point of order, Lori, there's another item on the agenda here. I don't know if we're skipping.
Oh,
that
you
or-
know, I did. You're right, because I
Yeah.
scribbled it out. I'm so sorry, Adam. We'll go back to that. There, I did see on the agenda that I was going to appoint subcommittee roles. However, there are several new subcommittees that are potential ideas based on what came out of our self-evaluations, and as well as different things that we've learned from the MASC listserv. So I'm not going to be appointing those this evening, but Adam, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so and I'll share it with all of you. I have a document I put together for us to look at of some of those districts that shared their subcommittees and what they are and what they are charged to do, that I'll send out to the group, and perhaps we can use that to guide which subcommittees we even want to have. And
Yes.
maybe in some cases, whether some of these might be able to be combined going forward. So what I see across some others is that there is a lot of combination of like facilities and finance and things like that. And I think it's worth us looking at as a group sometime at our next meeting before we go ahead and start appointing people to subcommittees we might change. And I had a couple other new business items, Lori, if
Sure.
I could, before we jump into executive session, if that's okay.
Yep.
Just first, I'd like to make a motion to ask this policy subcommittee to revisit policy ACAB at their next policy subcommittee meeting.
Could I have a second
A second.
discussion? Okay, motion to discuss policy ACAB at the policy subcommittee meeting. Did I do that right, Adam?
Yep.
Passes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Look at, see, this is what
I'm
happens
sorry.
towards the end. When it's not on my little list here, I mess it up.
47. This is like the longest meeting we've had since
I know.
January.
It is, it is. So I guess we need to take a vote, don't we? Yeah. Julie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
I'm an I as well.
Lori, I have one more before you
Sure.
go on, because we spoke about it earlier. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the chair and the clerk to establish a Facebook group or Facebook page on behalf of the BBRST School Committee, where we can share relevant information with our community. So my motion is to create that Facebook page and initially make the clerk and the chair the administrators of that page on Facebook.
Could I have a second?
Second,
Megan, discussion. Vote. Julie?
aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I'm an I as well. The motion to create a school committee Facebook page with the chair and
Clerk.
the clerk passes. All right, we are going to go into executive session.
So moved.
Could I have a motion? Thank you. Adam, could I have a second?
Second.
Second,
Okay, Megan. Roll call. Adam,
Aye.
Bob,
I am going to drop, sorry, I was
Mhm.
I in a different context. I apologize, but I need to drop Lori. Should have used a different word. Me, I'm gonna drop. I won't be able to join back on, but I'm sure you guys have it.
okay, excellent.
All
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Megan,
aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I am an I as well. My goodness. I'd like to call this meeting of the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee back to order. And at this time, could I have a motion to table the vote on the contract for legal review?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Julie? Discussion? Vote. Adam? You,
Mute.
Mike,
You're on mute.
Adam,
Aye.
Julie,
aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I am an I as well. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Roll call. Do I have to do roll call? Yes, let's just do it one last time. Julie,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I am an I as well.